Let's talk about Midnight. This time, instead of getting anxious about what could be, we can get upset about what is. I took my time making this video because the media blitz in the first few days following Midnight's announcement didn't inspire confidence in what was being shown to us. And I'm glad I did because I just kept learning stuff. I do think the team either realized their strategy wasn't working by the weekend, or the interviews on Friday were part of the plan all along, and it just made sense, I guess, at that point. I still have to remind myself that my lingering negative feelings about Midnight come exclusively from how the expansion was announced, and not anything about the expansion itself. But it goes to show how important first impressions are for this kind of thing. And even though it was kind of out of Blizzard's control, having to wait 2 hours to see the cinematic was a bit of a letdown. But will it be a Warlords or a Legion, Dragonflight or Shadowlands, Forsaken or Beyond Light? My impression now is generally positive, so while I may be a little critical on some points, don't expect me to be overly negative. But I am still disappointed that they're moving forward with not just 3 days early access, but still keeping it locked behind the $90 upgrade tier. I am sticking to my values on that one and won't be pre-ordering the higher tier. That said, among my predictions in that first video, I made a statement about myself in regards to any new class or spec that would be announced. So, Devourer is my personality now. For better or worse. I never had much confidence about Demon Hunter getting anything new ever, and it doesn't feel great that it's just getting a reskinned Havoc Metamorphosis model, but it's cool with some caveats and will probably be fun to play, so I'm still getting hyped for it. It has the potential to be the most mid thing ever, or the coolest thing added to the game in years, from both a lore and gameplay standpoint. Will we finally see the process of becoming a demon hunter portrayed in-game? It's brutal. The Illidan novel didn't shy away from how depressing it is. Will we get a new wave of demon hunters having their world-ending vision that makes you gouge your eyes out? I have seen some people joking about, what would Illidan think about demon hunters using the Void, and like, what part of any means necessary don't you understand? I think it's something many long-term Demon Hunter roleplayers have held onto through the years, with how many have come out saying, Devourer is perfect for my Demon Hunter, they've been messing with the Void for a while now. And you know what? Same. But some of the artistic decisions being made around Devourer are just baffling to me. I don't want to get too negative and complainy about it, but it's like they're trying to create a second type of Demon Hunter, but still calling it a Demon Hunter. Even though by any account of what we've been told so far, it's not a demon hunter? I don't get it. The most cynical part of me looks at this and thinks they basically just made a one spec class and stitched it onto demon hunter, instead of actually making a true third spec for demon hunters. Like, changing Felscarred to Scarred? Please reconsider. What's next? Fel Rush becomes Rush? Oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to read that line. I don't want to give them any more ideas. Don't do that. Why not rename the entire class to Illidari? What is it about Devourer that makes it so bloody special and unique that we can't have any green spell effects? What happens to the demon grafted to our soul when we spec into Devourer? So, I disagree with that Void-only angle from a lore standpoint, but it feels like a moot point to argue lore against the entity that can literally change the lore on a whim. But that doesn't mean I don't have questions. I guess as long as we end up with a decent explanation in the quests as to why the spec functions that way, I can run with it. Still, it's not like there's no lore precedent for using Void and Fel at the same time. Xal'atath from Hellfire Citadel and his Shadowfell Annihilation mechanic is right there, and we're already calling the hero talent Annihilator. I was honestly surprised it wasn't based around Xal'atath with a name like that. Is it because Warlock already has spell effects with that Shadowfell looking flame effect? Well, Shadow Priests are still right there, and we're still getting a slew of effects that would be right at home in their visual kit. Not only that, even Shadow Priest doesn't get exclusively Void spell effects. I just don't think this is a visual decision that the devs should be making unilaterally. It's the perfect opportunity to utilize the glyph system to leave some agency in the hands of the players. I'm still gonna play the hell out of it either way. Blizzard can write whatever lore they want, but they can't dictate my imagination and roleplay. And not only is it a range damage spec, but the playstyles already look amazing on paper. My 100% original read on it is Final Fantasy XIV Reaper with the collapsing star build versus more of a red mage with some versatility between melee and ranged. I am very interested to get my hands on the talents, and worst come worst, I'll just stick to Havoc since it may very well get some significant changes along the way. But there's more to Midnight than Devourer and my niche lore interests. The cinematic was downright amazing. Almost worth waiting 2 hours. Seeing fully rendered Blood Elves was a dream come true, but they were just wonderful. The eye glow ultimately isn't that big a deal. Yeah, it's weird, but I won't be thinking about it all once the expansion drops. Everything about Lord Thamar in the cinematic was amazing. He's a total badass and didn't need the light to break out of whatever Xal'atath cast on him. I also really loved the way he and Liadrin fought, very flowing and elegant, lightning fast, acrobatic attacks. And the music at the end was healing to me. The part that played when the Heroes of the Light were arriving was a track that I don't think we ever saw used during the War Within, but was in the game files, which was a point of frustration for me. The track was literally called the World Soul Saga. So hearing the track not just used, but used at the apex of the cinematic like that, very nice. But it is sort of like the World Soul Saga is only now kicking off. But we collectively need to stop it with these weird accusations of AI or outsourcing or whatever the popular complaint is of this week. Not everything you don't like is made with AI, and that kind of accusation can be very damaging. Not just because the artists might have their feelings hurt, but if an art director thinks someone's product looks like AI, that may cost a human artist their job just because their art looks like it might have come from the infernal machine. And it's not the first time Blizzard has made artistic decisions that make the cinematics look a little different. You can see they use the same deeper shadows in the Demencia's kill cinematic, and no, that's not because AI made both of them. That's not how AI works. That aside, I'm really interested in seeing how the cinematic links to the game's story. Supposedly, our players will be arriving from the Sunwell alongside the paladins of the cinematic at the start of the questing in Midnight. So this invasion is the culmination of the pre-patch event? It sounds like we're starting with another scenario, which usually leads to a smoother early questing experience. But it does leave me with a couple questions. How did Xal'atath get that far unopposed? Did Darkhan Drathir come back from the dead again to help her? Did the Sin'dorei not put the Bandinorial back in place when the Sunwell was reignited? What about the Elf Gates? Lots of questions, so few answers, but that's the fun of the expansion cycle, isn't it? Last point, kind of on the cinematic before moving on, it's also sort of related to people's bingo cards. Xal'atath's feet. This isn't a unique obsession to the WoW community, but I'm disappointed seeing so many people engaging with it. If you like feet in that way, cool. Good for you, I'm not here to shame. But I think some people are hiding behind a veil of irony and not thinking critically about the jokes they are making. Let's be clear. Blizzard has not been sexualizing Xal'atath's feet. The community certainly has, and it's weird. And it's just kind of rich seeing people crack jokes over Xal'atath's feet, then defending cinematic Liadrin from the anti-woke crowd by saying that she's attractive, actually. Like, at least we're being somewhat consistent. But can we please look at one woman character and not sexualize her? Yeah, she looks good, it's not a big deal. The answer isn't to sexualize her positively. Fact of the matter is that the people putting cinematic Liadrin through AI to make her look like a blow-up doll just hate women. There's no point arguing with them. If you aren't going to just shame them, the best thing to do is ignore them. But there is still room for all of us, including myself, to do some introspection here. Because it's not just capital G gamer culture driving this hypersexual behavior. Look at the way the game itself has historically treated its women, both players and characters. That is a whole other can of worms that I'm not equipped to talk about right now. Anyway, there's more positive than negative about Midnight for me, so let's move on to the positives. Quel'thalas is everything I expected and wanted. It all looks gorgeous and captures the vibe of the original zone. There's a bunch of motifs and iconography that I think are new to the updated pieces just to look at old buildings and find out they've been there the whole time. It's clear this was all made by passionate artists, which is why I'm not that concerned about the dead scar being nowhere to be seen. Would it have been better for that to be something that the players got to tackle over time? Absolutely. But it is a significant enough part of Quel'Thalas' identity that I'm sure they will pay plenty of attention to its absence during quests and world building. Unfortunately, it does seem that the art direction is stripping out the striking visual identity of the Blood Elf color scheme by using accent gems with a aqua-ish teal color instead of the vibrant green that we've seen as recently as this tier's Paladin heroic coloration. Maybe there'll be armor color variants with the green crystals. It's gonna be very, very silly if the Blood Elf Heritage armor clashes with sets from the dedicated Quel'Thalas expansion. And one more negative thing. The ban on fel magic in the city can make sense, provided it's just in the city. For all we know, it could be banned for the same reason the Void is, because it messes with the Sunwell or something. Maybe some politics about a puritanical counselor exercising their influence in a corrupt way to drive fel users out of the city. Create conflict out of it. But currently, this is such a nonsensical jump in the story for the Blood Elves. Like, I want the story to treat all magic as something intrinsically dangerous again. The portrayal of Volatile Arcane and Manaforge Omega is an amazing start. But maybe Silvermoon City wasn't the next best step. It's all sort of leaning in on the Sunwell resolution of the Burning Crusade, which is regarded as one of the worst story decisions Blizzard has made, both from a lore and just general storytelling perspective. Imagine a story about someone struggling with drug addiction, and the resolution to their story is that they just get hooked on different drugs instead. That is a tragic ending, not a positive one. There is room for a potentially interesting story redirection like how War Within tackled Anduin and Magni and progressed their characters to something less silly. The Naru Sunwell plot basically feels like a death flag that the Sunwell will, at some point, flip to the Void Naru style. And what happens to the Blood Elves if they lose the Sunwell now? The Draenei became broken when they lost the light. Will the elves turn withered, or some secret, more horrifying third thing? It could genuinely be a good direction for the story of the elves, of the Highborn. The first time around, when the Highborn lost their font of magic, they were rejected by the Night Elves for trying to survive, then by the humans. And on this third time, it would be inspiring to see them embraced by their allies in the Horde, and come out even stronger for it. The good old storytelling rule of 3, you know? But we didn't get any word on Thelyssra except for a few frames in the gameplay trailer showing Shal'Darai and Silvermoon City. If I had to guess, they'll have a Shal'Darai embassy somewhere in the Horde-only section of Silvermoon, but I am not touching the faction debate beyond that until we see more of the story. Make it make sense alongside the way factions are handled by the rest of the game. And I know we're getting some story chapters about Eretor and Alaria having therapy or whatever, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't care about Alaria's story. Her character arc since Legion has been entirely flat. She's still struggling with the same things as when we found her on Argus. Part of the problem, I think, is because Alaria's existing characterization as Orc Killer Supreme relied on her being extremely competent and proactive, which puts her at odds with how every aspect of WoW's quest framework puts the player character into the hero role. You can look at that one quest where you tell Alaria to take down the Void Shield instead of, going to her when she's taking down the Void Shield. Surprise, surprise, this is my biggest issue with 11.2. My character felt out of place with zero agency in what was going on, and the Demencia's kill cinematic doesn't even try to pretend our heroes were involved at all. But hey, maybe Eretor will be more interesting than crustless Whitebread and have a relatable character story, then we can hang out with him instead. I think the important thing to remember is that when Alpha drops, what is will very quickly become what was, and it will stay that way forever after. So much of what we think we know about Midnight lore topics will very quickly become non-canon overnight, and I just have to wonder, how much of it is really worth getting stressed about right now? Anyway, Zul'Aman! It's beautiful, and from what we can tell, their story is being handled much better than Legacy of Aerithor would have led us to believe. There is slight room for them to do something tropish and annoying with Zul'jin's grandchildren and have us end up killing Zul'jin for whatever reason, but the fact that our fight with the Loa is to prove our strength and not to kill them is a marked difference to how we've engaged with trolls previously. I'm also like 90% certain we're going to see a callback to Kithix somehow, if not see him completely resurrected, with the Twilight's hammer seemingly having a presence in Zul'Aman. This would make sense with the alliance between Xal'atath and N'Zoth, whose will the Twilight's hammer still seems to serve. Also, it's following up on what they did in The Ringing Deeps with Xal'atath bringing about the Skardan, kinda just doing callbacks to her previous manipulations. There's a lot more that could be going on here, but with the sparse story details we have right now, I'm pretty positive on it. Herondar is touching on a topic that I think is fascinating with the context of everything we've seen in the last few expansions. 10.2 really started to lay the groundwork for the Emerald Dream as we know it being an ordered section of a larger plane of existence, and the wording around the Dream Rift raid leads me to believe that we'll be entering untouched dream space. Not only that, but I believe Herondar itself might exist within the Emerald Dream. They've said it doesn't actually exist anywhere on Azeroth, but it exists where the roots of the world trees intersect, and it features the Rift of Alm. And honestly, in hindsight, if this is what we're getting now, I'm kinda glad we didn't get the Rootlands attached to Kaz Algar. But beyond all of that, it's finally bringing around something that has been critical to a lot of my theories about the future story, particularly N'Zoth. We're going to see what happens when the light is unopposed, and why we need the void to balance out against it. This is, literally, the reason I don't think we're going to see N'Zoth make a return during midnight. Instead, I think he'll be our ally against the light in the future. But on to the Voidstorm. Initially, I was skeptical about this zone with the impression that this was the reason I wasn't getting a bigger Quel'thalas map. But after learning more about it, I'm a lot more interested than I was initially. It doesn't seem like this is meant to be the poorly named Voidlands that was mentioned a few times previously, but it'll be interesting to see proper Void creatures in their own environment who aren't just insane old god cultists. As long as the expansion doesn't end with Xerath Umbra, it's fine. Oh, and they said don't expect Naga to return, but in some of the shorts you can see Naga buildings in the background. I thought it might just be Murloc camps on the western coast of Eversong at first, but they have these distinctive tanks that we only see in full Naga camps. So it might not be a full invasion yet, but there is a Naga presence just like there was earlier in Battle for Azeroth before we got Nazjatar. On to gameplay features though, I'm not convinced the prey system is complex enough to be featured as strongly as it was in the gameplay trailers. Delves made sense, they're mini dungeons, but I can't really picture prey being anywhere near as involved as delves are, but I am willing to be surprised. They have a habit recently of committing to systems and making them better over time, so I'm not worried that this will go the way of Warfronts unless it flops really bad. But I'm also hoping that Prey can be framed as an alternative open world to the delve gearing track, and not just another weekly task we have to check off. Though I am glad to see we have a Blood Elf as our delve companion. Valeera wasn't in my top 3 or top 5 or even top 10 picks, but I have wanted to see more of her in the story. She's also one of the OG comic book characters, and I think some of Warcraft's best storytelling circles around that old crew. Also regarding delves, I have been critical of them and their place in the game at large, but I think Midnight is addressing my biggest complaint about them by tying them more into the main story experience. I think there's potential for these locations to feel a lot more meaningful. Not just on the first trip there, but on subsequent trips at Endgame in a way that the War Within delves really lacked. The expansion to the talent system though is honestly more in line with what I thought we would get after Dragonflight, specifically Apex talents. That was basically what I expected hero talents to be like, but with the existence of hero talents as they are, the division of points across all 3 trees makes more sense. And the Apex talents they've showed us look very strong numerically to the point that they almost feel like an auto-lock, but it does feel like the design vision is that it shouldn't be the wrong choice to not take all 4 points. I was initially worried over hero talent balance, but things are pretty damn even for most classes these days, so I trust them to balance Apex talents correctly. There may still be some awkward cases. Devourer's Apex talent is focused on Collapsing Star, but we already know that they will have one build that focuses on extending Metamorphosis and therefore getting more Collapsing Star casts, but one is less focused on Metamorphosis. Maybe that second build would only take 3/4 of the points for the cosmic damage bonuses? It's really hard to say at this point. And as good as the Voidstorm PvP zone and permanent comp stomp and other changes look, I don't think it's going to be enough to drive more players to PvP. I think there's a lot of issues of complexity and class design that still make PvP really unapproachable for the vast majority of players. Maybe it'll make more sense when the add-on apocalypse finally hits and the information ecosystem is balanced out between all players. And for the last big Midnight feature, housing. I think we've reached a point where they don't really have anything else to show us except the limits of exterior decoration. Even then, it's at the point where I just need to get my hands on it, but I mean, it still looks amazing. I just don't think there's anything I could possibly dislike about it, save for acquisition methods on furniture. The shop revamp does have me just a little concerned for how they're going to monetize it. And while they've talked about being able to buy more of unique furniture once acquired, it's cool, but a lot of the Gamescom information is getting contradicted by these blog posts they're putting out, so I don't know what we can trust. Oh, but we also don't know how many items are going to come from professions. They talk about this new lumber resource, but it's still possible that the old mat market is going to get hit like a truck. I've kind of figured it would be comparable to Final Fantasy, but I'm really hoping it just wasn't a waste of time for me to go back and level all my old professions. But between housing and Silvermoon City, this is definitely the expansion for roleplayers. And I think this gives us something of a litmus test for sentiment towards Midnight overall. It's hard to argue with the number of people in Silvermoon City on roleplay servers now, compared to how abysmally underpopulated it was before the announcement. But kind of in line with that train of thought, I fully expect that their backtracking on limited housing exteriors by faction will be backtracked again once housing hits PTR. Most players aren't checking every little piece of news that comes out. They see Gamescom information, that's what they run with. So there will be a not insignificant number of players who see that housing exteriors are limited by faction and will be rightfully upset. Also, it's just a weird idea. Boundless self-expression, but not if you want to use housing exteriors in the wrong neighborhood. Anyway, despite the underwhelming media blitz immediately following the expansion reveal, I think Midnight is shaping up to continue the positive trend of post-lawsuit expansions. There is still a lot we don't know, but it's not that the information doesn't exist, just that we don't have it yet. Alpha is still just a few weeks away, whatever that's supposed to mean. And if you enjoyed this video, a like or comment goes a long way to helping its reach. My process for making videos can be a little insular, especially on opinion-focused videos like this one, and I really do like seeing other people's opinions on the topics I talk about. But that's all from me. Take it easy, have a good week, and I'll see you in the next video.